And my goal with this video podcast is to introduce people that have been influential in my life, who I've learned from, and I'd like to share their knowledge with everybody who wants to learn more and be better. One of the goals, as many of you know, is that I published my book, Work, Passion, Life Balance, and I love talking with people with a lot of passion in life, with specific ideas of how they could be better in themselves, make themselves better, make others better. And I found that the perfect person to kick off this video podcast and podcasts in general. For more information, you'll be able to follow us on the podcast links called People You Should Know. And our first guest is Dr. Chris Weber. I'm going to bring him on shortly. I just wanted to read a little bit about him, just so you can understand why I chose him as the first guest. He is triple board certified in internal medicine, pediatrics, and obesity medicine. He is also certified strength and conditioning specialist. He owns a business called Refined Wellness Consulting, and he describes it as a health and wellness consulting business that specializes in personalized nutrition, physics, activity, and behavioral programming for motivated, busy professionals. And I am really excited about joining him. I've known Chris for a while. We actually did internal medicine and pediatric residency together. He was one of my mentors during the training process, and he's done some great things, and I'm really excited to bring him on. So with everybody can help me, 1, 2, 3, let's bring him on, Chris Weber.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think we're coming up on probably close to 10 years ago that we've known each other. So I think this is great what you're doing, and I feel honored to be on the show here. So
absolutely. Well, you are the first guest, and I'm really excited about having you. Tell everybody who's watching and who's following, tell us about yourself and why we're going to talk a little bit about exercise, but tell people why they should listen to you and why they should know you.
Sure. Because I said so. No. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in the Milwaukee area, did my medical school and residency there. First job out of training was in a federally qualified health center. So working in an underserved area, worked with people with HIV, which is kind of a unique situation. And then I kind of stumbled across obesity medicine, which, believe it or not, is a relatively new field. So it's an exciting time to be part of that. Studies are exploding with more treatments, but it really resonated with me as an individual. I mean, I've been into fitness and wellness and all that stuff, forever, since middle school. I played college football, so it really resonated with me and people around me. I mean, people love getting healthy if it's not too burdensome. And so that's an important part is are you doing it right? Are you doing it efficiently? Yeah. So anyway, I got board certified in obesity medicine, and I see patients as a primary care provider, obesity medicine. And then I went down more the coaching consulting route shortly thereafter. So certified strength and conditioning specialist. And then I started Refine from there.
Yeah. So tell me about your journey after residency. You did the clinic and you saw a lot of patients. What was the situation during that initial exposure as an attending, and what kind of helped you define or to go into Refine?
Yeah. So there are a few things, and I'm sure it's not unique to me. Other entrepreneurial type people might have come across the same thing. One was the work-life balance, right? Which, I mean, you're the expert on that.
I love it.
There were things that were out of my control working for a big organization. Okay. All sorts of positive things working for a big organization. But some things that I thought maybe I could do quicker or a little bit more my style. And so that was one thing. And then scheduling, there's shorter, quicker appointment times for patients. Mm-hmm. And then there's also this whole realm of people who don't want prescription medications, right? They want to be healthy. They want to do it naturally. They want to do it organically. And the medical field is just not set up to offer that service. Now they're good or bad. It's just, that's not its role. Sure, and so that was one reason that I started Refine. And, people told me, why would you jump into the health and wellness industry, right? It's completely saturated.
Lots of YouTubers doing it.
Right. You gotta be crazy or not all that bright. And maybe I'm both because here I am. But I saw
hey, you're doing it.
I saw a gap that I thought I was kind of uniquely positioned to fill. And that was two things. One was convenience and efficiency. All right. There's all sorts of options. If you want to drive 30 minutes, sit in a waiting room, get hustled through an appointment, you have a question, you call, 3 days later, you get a response. Plenty of options for that. What if you're busy? I want people to enjoy their life and their family and their hobbies, and they got work to do. What if you have a quick question between conference calls? Shoot me a text. This program, or this business has been set up to be remote from day one. Okay. And that's for client benefit, right? So they don't want to be, like I said, efficiency. I'm a very time-oriented, schedule-oriented person. You got a question, shoot me a text. We do video text. Let's say, cool. Let's say I program in a deadlift for your weightlifting program. You're like, I have no idea what a deadlift is. Am I doing it right? Shoot me your video. I'll critique it, send a video back.
Really?
So it's very client-friendly.
So you were able to take to telemedicine essentially to the health and wellness area and have no constraints. I've been a big fan of telemedicine for 15 years, ever since med school. Ask all my med school friends. I've been a big fan of telemedicine, and I thought it should have been sooner. It only took a pandemic to kind of get it certified, but it sounds like since 2017, you've been kind of very proactive in a unrestricted telemedicine type of interactions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the health and wellness industry, there's not insurance requirements. Some of the legal stuff is different, clearly, when you get into the medical field. And I've loved that, and clients have loved that too. We offer, I have a meal replacement program. Not that everyone needs that, but it just gets mailed right to your door. You don't have to go pick it up anywhere. So convenience is convenient. Huge, and efficiency, because like I said, it's geared a little more toward busy professionals and you got other things to do. It's kind of like outsourcing your landscaping. Let's outsource your
that's a great way
health
to think
and
about
wellness
it.
plan.
That's a great way.
That was one part, was the convenience and efficiency. The other thing was the quality. So even 3 years ago, and even more now, like you said, there are so many social media influencers, and you do a few selfies. You don't know who to believe. Well, that's the issue, right? And it's very overall very cookie cutter. You can find a billion different programs that you can order relatively inexpensively or expensively, and have a program, right? Emailed some Word document, and go through. Is it going to work for you? We don't know, because it's not personal at all. And what's the knowledge base behind that program? So, I mean, you and your listeners are savvy, right? You know that credentials sometimes mean nothing, sometimes mean a little bit, and sometimes mean a lot. So I'm biased in this case. But, so with the obesity medicine board certification, with the strength and conditioning, forget about those. But the important thing is that we're required, right? Like physicians too, like you got to have continuing education. And so I'm always talking to experts on the topic. I'm going to conferences, and that's what I pass along to clients. So you're talking to nutritionists, you're talking to physical therapists, you're probably talking to some surgeons to see is there surgical options, and you're trying to keep people out of the OR. But what other people are you talking to at these conferences? Those are the main ones. I mean, other ones who are similar to me, who are physicians or healthcare providers doing non-surgical stuff. But also in the strength and coaching realm, collegiate coaches. And so that's been a really interesting thing for me. That's a great point. Yeah. So taking these kind of high level, really intense exercise programs that are designed for collegiate athletes, and then adapting them a little bit to anybody, right? I mean, most people don't think of, I don't mean to stereotype, but like a 65-year-old woman should be doing some heavy lifting. Right? It's good for bone strength, and most people. Yep. Absolutely. A lot of people think, any age and gender, that just huffing along on the treadmill for hours is the best way to be healthy, and that's just, it's inefficient. There are better ways to do things. So it's melding those two worlds. It's kind of been fun. And I'm excited to talk more about exercise, because the whole 30-30 exercise challenge that I started, I know I'm on day 9 and I'm feeling excited and motivated. But we're going to get into the exercise components, the do's and don'ts, because I even have a lot of questions as a physician, as somebody who I consider myself healthy. But what are the newest trends? It's so hard to keep up. And the problem with influencers is that you don't know who to believe and who not to believe, and all these magic elements
the one thing I really like about you, and which all my fans should really understand and followers, is you're a physician, you have obesity training, and you're a collegiate athlete. And so those three pillars create a great program for anybody to be healthy.
Right. So the newest trends in exercise, it's like a lot of things. It's cyclical. All right.
Yeah,
you get very excited about one form of exercise, and a decade later it's gone, and then it comes back into favor. So that's how things work, in medicine and nutrition and all sorts of things. Talking about exercise, I think the number one thing to realize is what's your goal, right? What's your goal with exercise?
Yeah.
So if you want to live longer and be healthy, that's a very different exercise plan than, hey, I want to get big and strong. All right. I want to jump higher. Very different approach. And then I already said number one. Number two is you got to pair it with nutrition. All right. I think people almost across the board overemphasize and expect too much out of exercise. There's all sorts of
You mean
things
it doesn't work overnight?
Dude, you're not working hard enough if you're not better the next morning. You can crawl out of bed. You didn't work hard enough. Well, right. And so this blows everyone's mind, and no one believes me. People scowl at me, but the average person doing an average amount of exercise doesn't lose weight sustainably. You'd never believe that looking at the internet or magazine covers, right? But statistically,
it's
that's
really
what
just
happens.
those skinny, fit people that are like, I did 10 minutes of abs a day. Look what I can do.
Yeah. What are you starting with? What's the rest of your life look like? Yeah. So it's a complicated business too. Complicated situation, weight and health, and so many variables.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed, especially going into the most recent year, months in 2020, with the pandemic, everything changed from a personal standpoint. People had more time on their hands. One of the things that I've experienced in conversations with people is that they didn't like who they were once the busyness stopped. And part of that was that they never really had a relationship with themselves. One of the things I talk about a lot about is work is where you're selflessly giving yourself without much in return, maybe a paycheck, but you can work on family relationships. You can work on things that you're selfless. Life is about mutually beneficial relationships. Who are you giving and taking from in your life that's mutually beneficial? But passion is about what sustains you, what gives you energy. And when you look in the mirror, what makes you happy? So it's kind of that selfish relationship. And I think what happened over the past several years, maybe even decades, is people felt that selfishness is a bad term. And so that you should always be, selfless. You should always give of yourself and never think about yourself. But when we came into the pandemic and 14 million people were unemployed or more, one of the things that happened was that people had time now. People were at home. They weren't commuting. They weren't working on their office. And so now they had time to realize, I don't know if I like myself. And that goes into hobbies, but also into exercise and what they saw in the mirror. And so one of the passions that you mentioned before in our discussion was that you're passionate about exercise. So how does the pandemic affected your life personally in terms of going deeper into exercise or going wider in terms of teaching others? Any changes over the past 6 months?
So personally, one of the best things I did for my work-life balance was to get exercise equipment at home. I was telling you.
I was going to say, it looks like a personal gym in your house. LA Fitness,
It's my hobby and my business, so it helps. But I haven't exercised in a gym since probably, before I met you. So it's been a long time, and that has been fantastic for me personally and for a lot of people I work with, because I walk downstairs. Now, true, not everyone has a setup like this, but you don't need a setup like this. This is a lot of bells and whistles. But the travel time is not there, and it's not time away from my family. So I really enjoy it. Now, there definitely are people who have to go to the gym, right? They'll never use that exercise bike coat rack in their basement if they don't get out and go to the gym. So, so for me personally, not a lot has changed in the last couple of months because of this. But for
well, it's no different than if you loved to paint and you were a painter and you had your art supplies in your basement and you went down and painted. Making time for your passion is all about where do you prioritize your time, your money, your interests. What are you reading about? And so passion to me is if you were, like I mentioned, a painter, you'd have painting supplies. If you're a gardener, you'd have like the best shovel because you're a gardener, that you want the best tools. And it sounds like, if I'm not wrong, exercise is one of those kind of things that you just love reading about. You love listening to audiobooks about, you love creating, you love experiencing and creating and enhancing the current status quo.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And for all sorts of reasons, which I think are good reasons. Of course, I'm very biased, but exercise is great for mood. Okay. It's more potent than antidepressant medications. All right. Doesn't kick in quite as quickly, but it's great for mood. It's great for sleep. It's great for self-confidence. Something else, a lot of your listeners might know about this or feel similarly. People have challenges in their lives, but a lot of people don't really have very significant challenge. Life is fairly comfortable, food's there, you go to work, you come home, kids maybe cause a little trouble, boss gets on your case. So not major challenges. So it's hard to aspire to be better when you're not challenging yourself. So for me, exercise is that challenge. It's kind of a manufactured challenge. But everyone can think of their own inspirational movie. Rocky comes to my mind.
Heck yeah, I love Rocky.
Right. There was, you don't have Apollo Creed swinging at you. You don't have, defensive linemen who are, 2 feet taller than you coming after you. So exercising kind of creates that challenge. And when you come out after, 30, 60 minutes of exercising and you've accomplished something, you've lifted more weight, or you've struggled and you're sweating it feels like you succeeded. And the rest of the day, you'll do fine if you can get through that workout, right? So that's one reason I'm passionate about it.
I agree with that. We're not working with our hands. I mean, a lot of people are working with their hands. A lot of people are building houses. There's houses going up, next to our office here. You can accomplish something at the end of the day. For a lot of people, we don't have that gratification of accomplishing something. We're a lot more sedentary. We're sitting at desks. We're doing emails, which is totally not, gratifying in any case. So I think that, to your point, if we were more active as a culture at baseline, I don't know, if exercise would be as important as it is today, where majority, 90% more, are just sedentary and they're not accomplishing much. And so I love where you drew the correlation between like accomplishing something every day. Simple things can really make a difference in your life.
Yeah. And going off what you said there with society and sedentary behavior, you are absolutely right. I mean, you look at these places where people live disproportionately to 100. Nobody's going to the gym.
There's no offices.
No, but they're constant low level, steady state exercise. Yeah. They're gardening, they're walking.
Less McDonald's, less fast food, less, more whole
And
grain.
on that point, it is, I see this all the time, and I'm glad, you're talking to me so we can get the word out. It is almost impossible to out-exercise a bad diet. That sounds common sense.
It's impossible to out-exercise. Okay, all right.
And it's even hard to out-exercise a halfway decent diet, right? Okay. And it's almost impossible to out-exercise a sedentary lifestyle. So you sit at a desk all day long. I'm not pointing my finger. I am pointing my finger at you sitting at a desk.
I stay out here.
Good. But someone sits at a desk all day long and then they hit the gym really hard for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You are not going to offset that day worth of sitting, right? And they've looked at this in studies. Standing up every 15 minutes can be as beneficial as going to the gym for 30 minutes afterwards. So you're absolutely right. Society plays a part in it, and that's the work-life balance again.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, from, again, just people I've had conversations with, they don't want to exercise because they're so involved in their work. They're giving themselves, everything they're giving of themselves to their boss. And then they have to go and take care of the family. And the way I talk about it is really build it into your life, schedule it out, go on your lunch hours, even just work out from home. You mentioned Beachbody and all these, home-based platforms that allow you to actually, get some movement going. My goal with the hashtag 3030 exercise challenge was really just to start moving again. I do a lot of work in the yard. I'm doing a lot of painting now. My arms are really, up and down from painting all day, just some house projects. But I really wanted to get my body moving again. And I was really inspired by Kevin Hart. I don't know if you saw one of my last videos, but Kevin Hart was in a very serious car accident, and he had plates and screws inserted between, I think it was T11 through L3. And the doctors, and, I don't know how real it is, but they said they were, within millimeters of complete severing of his spinal cord. And what he attributed that was 3 years ago, he started to get very strong in a core. He started to work out his back and his abs, and he's been on a regular routine. He didn't know 3 years ago he would be in a car accident in 2020. But because of the small choices he was making along the way, he was better prepared to walk out of the hospital instead of being wheelchair bound for the rest of his life. And that was a major impact in my life. I have 2 kids. I couldn't imagine having an accident where I couldn't recover to the best of my ability because I chose to not live the best life I could. So that's what influenced me into starting this 30-30 challenge. It's just really start moving, get those muscles going again.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Having that mindset of prevention is hard to instill.
It is. Right? It is
hard to instill because you're doing fine right now. But things, you don't turn 30 and things fall apart. You don't turn 40 and things fall apart. It's been almost always something has been creeping up on you gradually over time, and then you reach the tipping point. So doing what you can to stay mobile and healthy all along is absolutely the way to do it. Prevention is so much easier than trying to fix things afterwards.
Yeah, well, we've known that for a long time, but medicine in general is not good at that. All of my training is always, treatment after the fact instead of treatment preventing. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about the exercise challenge. And one of the main reasons I thought you would be a great first guest is I have a lot of questions myself about exercise plans and kind of what qualifies for exercise, all these kind of things that I started to think about. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of ask the expert, ask the specialist some questions, and maybe everybody can benefit a little bit. So
yeah, go for it.
So you mentioned, sitting at a desk all day and then working out for 30 minutes doesn't cut it. What is the optimal way to get healthy if you have a desk job? If you are required to be in an office 8 hours a day, what is your recommendation to your clients about getting healthy from an exercise standpoint?
So anytime someone asks about exercise, I start with nutrition. Okay. You gotta have good nutrition. And we mentioned that already. Yeah. But as far as, focusing on the exercise part, if you can stand, sometimes that's possible. Standing desks or, I personally,
I got one of those.
I stack up a bunch of books. I don't have a fancy standing desk. So I stack up a bunch of books and it looks like a disaster, but standing is so much better than sitting. Right. And also psychologically, people tend to feel more active and less passive. So it's beneficial multiple ways, better blood sugar control and other things.
Really?
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Because you're activating muscles, the anti-gravity muscles are kicking in, utilizing glucose.
Okay. Right.
For outside the office exercise time, if you're just starting out, the general guideline for overall health is 150 minutes of walking a week. All right, moderate intensity exercise. Okay. And you can split that up however you want. You do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there.
Yeah, I've read those articles too. Is that actual? Have you probably read the studies a little bit more? What was the positive impacts out of 150 minutes? It seems so small. It does seem so doable, but it's it seems like that's the recommendation.
Yeah, so it started higher. I don't know what the number was initially, decades ago, but as they decreased
60 minutes a day, I think was.
And it's still that for kids. So if you're if you're a kid, it's still 60 minutes a day. Okay. But they found that the outcomes were similar as you decreased it. Now, that's for cardiovascular health. Okay. That's not, morbidity, mortality, deaths, all that stuff. That's not for losing weight. So what I have to do is, and what people should think about is what's the risk of the weight versus the risk of, or the benefit of walking.
Okay.
Right. And so 150 minutes a week, almost no one's going to lose weight with that. Okay. Right. That's another thing I tell people with exercise is you got it in your mind, separate the number on the scale from walking. And for most of the time, exercise in general, exercise is great for all sorts of things. Statistically, most people, not the best thing for the number on the scale.
Right.
So, don't stop exercising if the number on the scale isn't changing.
That's a great point. I know a lot of people who are starting to do some aerobic kind of cardiovascular health, but then they stop because they don't see the scale moving. So that's a really good point.
Often you'll hear this 10,000 step a day goal that people have. I want to get my 10,000 steps.
I think Fitbit was a big thing in that.
Yeah. So that was a made up number. I honestly don't know where, but it was one of these pedometer organizations that came up with it. I don't know where they got the data from or that specific recommendation, but they did look at people who hit 10,000 steps a day. How much weight did they lose over 6 months? It was half a pound. So that just emphasizes walking's not the best way to lose weight. Okay. That's the nutrition part. So anyway, to answer your question, 150 minutes a week to start of moderate intensity exercise.
Okay. So 30 minutes a day, 7 days a week, 210. So at least I'm checking off that box. So that's good. And anybody who's doing the 30-30, I think it's really important to do. That's the minimum kind of is what I'm doing. I'm typically in the gym for 45 minutes or an hour, but the whole idea is to get started. And for me, getting over the going to the gym or going to start workout, I could stay working out for 45 minutes, but it was like, oh, well, it's only 30 minutes. So I was almost tricking myself. I said, oh yeah, man, go to the gym for 30 minutes. Okay. And then when I got there, I'm like, oh, I could do this and I could do that. 45 minutes later, an hour later, I'm like, okay, I think I'm done.
Yeah. And so that shows the difference between determination and motivation. All right. If you're sitting around waiting for motivation, hey, I'm not motivated, I'll just wait until I feel like exercising. That might never happen. Motivation might never knock on your door, never give you a phone call. So you have this determination to get there and do it. Motivation often follows that once you start feeling better and getting the hang of it. So that's great.
So the second question I have is in Tampa anyway, it is hot. In summer in general throughout the country, it's pretty hot, except for Milwaukee. It's like 50 degrees there.
A little chilly,
crazy cold. But in general, it's as opposed to your short sleeved coat.
Don't pan down, please.
Well, one of the things that is tricking to me is I'm outside. I'm not really physically active, but I'm sweating. I know that my heart rate isn't maybe into the 140, 150 range. I'm just kind of tooling around outside sweating. And for a second, I started saying, oh, well, this is healthy for me. How healthy is sweating at baseline without any aerobic or anaerobic activity? Is there any correlation, any benefit at all to just kind of getting some toxins out? And what's the truth around that?
Yeah, in my mind, and from what I know in my training, no, there's no benefit to that. Now, there's hot yoga and steam rooms and things like that where people feel better afterwards. And if you want to relax, it's more of a psychological, hey, I'm relaxing and sweating, that's fine. But no, as far as cardiovascular benefit, no, the heart's a muscle. You got to work it out just like other muscles.
So when people are working in the yard, as a trainee in residency, we talked about, getting outside and gardening to do some exercise or getting outside and being physically active. But I found myself doing those things wasn't really, when I examined myself, I wasn't getting my heart rate up. I wasn't working, repetitive muscles. So how true is it that just kind of gardening, for instance, could help with physical strength or cardiovascular health or anything, or is it more just emotional health at that point?
Well, it's definitely emotional health. I mean, that's for sure. If you enjoy it, do something.
Right.
Getting a workout, doing laundry.
Love it.
There's this thing called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demand. And that's kind of common sense.
Okay. All right. Let me write that down.
If you go to the gym and you do some arm curls with a 5-pound weight, you might be sore the next day. It might be hard. You do that, as long as you're not overdoing it. After a couple of weeks, you're doing 20 pounds and it's easier. So you're imposing a demand to lift heavier weights and the muscles got to respond. Okay. It's like a lot of things in life. There's a stress, there's a response, you adapt.
Eventually it'll grow a little bit.
Yeah. So for you, with that example, you might be in good enough shape that gardening really isn't an exercise at all for you, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's not an extra imposed demand.
Because essentially my muscles have a certain tonicity to them already, and it's not creating a level of work for me specifically.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, if you were used to running marathons every weekend, and you stopped all that and went to gardening, you would lose cardiovascular health, right? That makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yourself as much.
So where's your baseline?
Yeah, and but also doing that gardening is good if you're doing that in addition to other things. To maintain whatever level you want.
Okay. So if somebody is sedentary and they start gardening, you could potentially correlate that if their baseline is very not moving and they start moving, there is some benefit to them in terms of increasing their baseline functionality for their heart. Is that something they can say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Yeah.
if all you're going is for overall health and you're not trying to build muscles or shed fat, that's sufficient, the gardening, right?
Okay.
I mean, because you have that, as long as you're not sitting around the rest of the day, you have a sufficient, you're hitting that 150 minutes a week of gardening. That's fine. If that meets, you just want to be healthy, that's fine. Again, healthy with a normal weight. If your weight's high, then we got to work to get it down.
Yeah, it's kind of where are you starting at from a baseline standpoint. I love the holistic approach. One of the things that I think we lack in our training from across the country is that holistic approach from a medicine standpoint. And so that's why, what you're doing with Refine is so important, incorporating the nutrition and the exercise and wellness. How much does where do you see people suffering the most? If you took all of your clients, you always talk about, you've been on this case show talking about nutrition as the number one. Do you think that's the major deficiency in a healthy life is nutrition?
I think so. If I had to pick one thing, that's probably it. It might be a flip of a coin between that and stress. All right. I mean, because stress underlies a lot of things. I mean, if you're stressed, not getting enough sleep, work is tough, your willpower tanks. Okay. And then it's harder to eat healthy. All right.
Yeah.
If life is going good and you're happy, it's a lot easier to choose a banana over a donut.
Yeah.
All right. If you're stressed and miserable, like I said, your willpower really does go low. Your cortisol, stress hormones go up.
Yeah.
Harder to make good decisions. So maybe flip that coin to land on the stress side a few more times. Then nutrition.
Part of it, and speaking from Laura's gonna hate me, by the way, but when Laura my wife buys a bag of Hershey's, it's gone in a day. My philosophy is don't buy the bag of chocolate. But it's when it's sitting there that when you have to say no multiple times an hour to yourself, eventually you're gonna say yes. And I've seen that in real life at home. It's sitting on the counter. If you're gonna buy it, put it in a drawer so you don't have to look at it all day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there's never a spouse whose spouse doesn't agree. There's always one of those two, 100% of the time. So you're not alone with that. I'll be right, and that's a stress. Every decision you have to make is a stress. People who are struggling to lose weight or be healthy, they're arguing with themselves all the time. People who just that's their baseline. They never have to stress about it. They're like, I have no interest in eating that cookie, or I have interest, but I got to be a good example. So just the answer is no, it's not a struggle.
Yeah. And that's one of the things about the 30-30 challenges. If I can convince myself to go to the gym every day, my struggle right now is to complete the 30-30 challenge. I'm singly focused on that. After 30 days for me, it's going to be much more of a habit. And I'm going to see the benefits. I'm going to enjoy it. But really, it's going to become part of my routine. And that's just how I function. Not everybody's the same, but I want to create a routine so I don't have to say gym or not. It's going to just be, it's 11 o'clock, gym time. Let's go. There's not a debate with myself. And Mark Zuckerberg talks about this. A lot of smart people talk about how many decisions you can make in a day. I'm not sure if I believe in a cap, but I do believe that your brain has a certain strength of, just like any other muscle, really, even though it's not technically a muscle, but you have a certain ability, like strength-wise, from a willpower. And at the end of a day, if you're no more strength of willpower, you're going to make different decisions than you would if you were fresh. So what plans do you recommend from a nutrition standpoint, since that's kind of a key foundation in wellness in general? And to maximize the benefits of exercise? Do you do the pyramid thing? Do you do the proportion thing? What is your guidance to your clients about nutrition?
Yeah, so I mean, there's some foundational stuff that we do. It's personalized to the individual, of course. I don't give a strict plan like, hey, you got to eat an avocado at 8 a.m. and you have to eat chia seeds at 12. That doesn't work. All right. Someone who's real type A and a rule follower, it might work for a couple months, and then once they're off, they're out. So anyway, I don't do that. I don't prescribe. It's more consulting. We go back and forth and see your preferences. Of course, if we're working together, we got to make changes because what you're doing isn't getting you where you want to be.
Yeah.
I start with, so always go over macronutrients.
Yeah.
Protein.
Do you do blood work for your clients to get assessment of their macro and micronutrients?
I don't. No, I don't. So the three most important, so in general, tracking is incredibly important. Okay. You got to know where you are. If you're flying down the freeway without a speedometer, you don't know if you're speeding or not, right? Even if you know what the speed limit is.
Even if you're comparing yourself to other cars, you might be speeding.
That's a problem. Right. Exactly. And so we got to see where you are. So you have to track, hey, I don't eat that much. Oh, I'm okay. I eat less than my spouse. None of that. I mean, I care, but none of that really matters for getting us where we want to be. So I do have a calorie goal for people. Counting calories is fraught with problems, but I have it just as a soft target. And then the macronutrients that I care about, carbohydrates, just carbohydrates and protein, really. Okay. You got to get enough protein if you want to improve your body composition. Fiber is always overlooked. So I have a fiber goal. That's a subset of carbohydrates that has only positive effects for most people.
Okay.
So calories is a soft goal. The macronutrients I'm a little more strict on. Timing is important. So I often recommend intermittent fasting or daily time restricted feeding.
Yep.
And then if you can be successful with getting rid of fat with nutrition alone. So those things we can focus on. If you're doing an exercise program, which I always recommend, you got to pair the nutrition and the exercise. Okay. So I'm really a fan of this nutrient cycling.
Okay.
If you have a caloric deficit.
I haven't heard about this before. Go ahead.
Oh, this is great. If you have a caloric deficit for a long time, that's what you have to do to get rid of fat. Let's say your body needs 2,000 calories a day. You give it 1,500 a day. You'll lose some fat. But over time, your hunger hormones start creeping up. Your metabolism slows down. And that's when people start reverting or yo-yo dieting.
Plateau. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so this nutrient cycling is an attempt to blunt those negative changes. So what you do is you give your body fuel when it needs it. Okay. So there's all sorts of different ways to do that. A common way is if you're doing 4 weightlifting sessions a week, around the exercise time, you do a lot more carbohydrates. Okay. A lot more carbohydrates, you get plenty of protein, and then you kind of trickle the rest of the nutrition out the rest of the day. And then other days, the other 3 days a week, either you're doing some sort of cardiovascular work or recovery or off day altogether, then you have a caloric deficit. All right, so you eat more on the resistance training days, less or fast on the non-resistance training days. And the overall week should be, if you're trying to increase muscle, decrease fat, is a caloric deficit over the week averaged out.
Sure.
All right. And then
on the days where you need them, where you need the nutrients, you kind of stack them on those days. And when you don't need them, you kind of back off a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And this comes more from the strength training world. So not something that they do in the medical world very often. Okay. I mean, the intermittent fasting, that's gaining momentum in the medical realm, but the nutrient cycling, not quite as much yet. Common practice. So I'm a big fan of that if you're doing intense enough exercise.
Yeah. David Asprey turned me on to intermittent fasting, and some of my friends also were doing it. I love it. In general, my brain feels sharper in many ways and my body feels healthier. And for me, it's essentially like a 16-hour kind of gap. So I try not to eat until noon, no creamer in my coffee and I do little things, but when I do it, I do feel good, surprisingly. I was always a big breakfast eater, but when you change up, as your body change, and I think for me, it was a body changing. I'm 36, I'm super old. But as my body changed, I needed to adjust my own nutritional habits. And I think that's something that gets left behind. People turn 40, 50, 60, and they still act like they're 30. You could drink and you could do all those things and you just recover so much faster. And I think part of it is just kind of a change in mindset as well. How much emotional support in terms of education do you give certain age groups? Is there any difference in terms of your clients?
No, I mean, the standard is once a week we check in. So, and this is via text and email. So I have some foundational education that I think everyone should have. And then I pick and choose topics based on the individual's challenges. So every week I'm sending some sort of education with optional homework to implement. You can't just read
homework.
it and say, okay, I read it, whatever, I know it. And a lot of so, and then I like to have some feedback from them. Hey, did you try that? Did it work? It's got to be incorporated. So I deliberately don't give you a packet full of like, a stack of stuff. It's just overwhelming at first. You're not going to incorporate it. So I give you the plan at first after we talk, and then trickle the education as we go along to make it last and make you be able to incorporate it.
Yeah. Well, like every good entrepreneur, it sounds like you have KPIs or key performance indicators on every client that you work with. And your goal is to check in to see, okay, how are they doing? If your goal is weight loss, are you losing the weight? If your goal is muscle gain, are you gaining the muscle? And so you're kind of doing a weekly cadence in terms of checking in. So it's very entrepreneur of you to do that. Another question about exercise. You saw my routine this week, and I'm kind of I played basketball in high school. I did run a marathon in med school. So in general, I have a baseline activity, but my daughter is 2.5, and it's, for the last 2.5 years, I haven't been exercising as well as I could be. And so I'm kind of getting back in. I'm using a lot of different kind of key things I've learned over the years. And like I mentioned, just trying to get back into it. But this week, for instance, I'm alternating core and then a body part like arms and legs. Is that good, bad? I mean, you mentioned 4 strength days a week. What's your thought in terms of kind of alternating core and then arm and core, then leg? That's my plan for the week. So am I on track or off track?
Yeah. There's so many things that work. Which surprises people, right? Just like nutrition, studies show that there are dozens of diets that have been proven to work. How come it doesn't work for me? Well, maybe you're not quite sticking to it the right way, or maybe you're not doing it long enough, or maybe that's not the right one for you. It might statistically help, but for you as an individual, it might not help. So that's the same thing with exercise plans. It's a million different ways to do it. I generally recommend 3 months, a 3-month trial of something, but you reassess every month.
Okay.
Right? So you give it a month. Make minor changes. And at 3 months, if you're not making really great progress, then you scrap it and go a completely different route.
And, okay. All right. And you help your clients do that. You're doing the reassessment on a weekly basis and then a monthly kind of overall assessment of goals.
Yeah, exactly. So weekly check-ins. And then at a month, we decide, do we to make minor changes to the program. As long as you're, not miserable on the program, I say give it 4 weeks and then we'll adjust if we need to. And there's always, since you asked, there's always midway through the program, we start working on maintenance and relapse prevention just to get that in your mind.
You're proactive.
Before we get to the end of the program, because I don't want you to sign off, say, hey, life is good, and then call me again in a year because you're back where you started. I do not want that. I want to say goodbye and then you're off flying for the duration. But no, as far as, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So to answer your question, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Depends on how much time you want to commit. How many days per week is the main variable. So how many days a week? You're doing 7 days a week, right?
7. I'm doing 30 minutes every day for 30 days. So for me, it was getting over it. But like I said, I'm doing like an hour a day every day.
Yeah, so I think if you're doing...
And swimming's part of it and running. I mean, I'm doing a whole bunch of things. My recovery days are more swimming and, elliptical type of cardio. But.
Okay, no, that sounds good. If you're doing 3 weightlifting days, it's good to do full body days because then you hit everything 3 days a week. If you're doing a split routine, like I mentioned, 4 days, you do 2 upper, 2 lower. And then whatever extra days you have in there are going to be the cardiovascular ones. So those are a few common ways to go about it.
One of my preceptor in training is Dr. Fitzgerald, and we talked a lot about kind of specializing and customizing medicine, like medications to your body type, to your hormone level, to your what receptors you have. Do you think that your industry is going to be going towards that in terms of the micronutrients, macronutrients, exercise plans? Do you think there'll be kind of studies or tests that you'll be able to kind of do a blood test and say, okay, your body type is this, and so you need 3 days of cardio a week to maintain? Is there ever something like that, you think? Yeah,
it's really interesting. People are working on it right now. I mean, you can swab your cheek and send in a DNA sample and get that exact kind of information. All right. I don't respond to exercise. I shouldn't spend so much time on it. Or, I need more carrots. So that stuff's out there. It's not validated well enough yet. So I look at it more like entertainment. And And most of the time, at least for the nutrition parts, at least every person who showed me what they've done, their results, it's kind of common sense too. Hey, I need more vegetables. I should stay away from sugar. But no, absolutely, that stuff is coming.
Cool.
Absolutely. And I mean, because a lot of it we know is genetic. Like people, like I said, most people don't respond long-term to exercise and weight loss, but some people really do. And that's a genetic situation. So yeah, that sort of stuff is coming.
Do you do anything with hormones in terms of hormone replacements or anything to help with kind of building either mass or kind of just getting the energy level up in terms of a wellness plan?
So yes and no. Okay. Absolutely. First of all, if weight's an issue, hormones are absolutely off. All right. We know that. All right. Adipose tissue fat cells, they don't just sit there and,
a lot of estrogen.
You don't like how it looks. Yeah. Cortisol. They send out all sorts of hormone signals, including estrogen and inflammatory signals. Mm-hmm. Your brain and stomach and intestines send out signals. And so those are all just completely out of whack. And we can get them back in whack if we get some of that adipose tissue away. So, but no, I don't do interventions, medications like that, unless, from the medical side, if you have a medically diagnosed
like a baseline
deficiency. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Refine is all about taking that next level of kind of customized health and wellness with a high quality. Talk about, what your goal in terms of the future of Refine.
So it's exciting where it is right now. Like I said, people have been exercising forever, right? But there's more and more studies. And the main thing with the studies that excites me is that there's a lot on efficiency. Like, what's the best way to do it in the least time? All right. And for people I work with, that's the main thing. Like, you got other things to do. I call it efficiency. Some people call it laziness. Like, let's get the job done as quickly as we can and get on to what we want to do, because a lot of people honestly don't like exercise. But I want people to be efficient and get to be able to do what they enjoy, like you focus on. So that's really exciting for me and for my clients. That part of things. And I think that would be the main answer. The nutrition, I think we're growing more as far as kind of products that we use. So one thing that I'm really excited about, there's this organic sustainable farm in Palmyra, Wisconsin that we have a relationship with, and they use a lot of their own plants and herbs and everything that they grow on the farm in their supplements. So high protein bars and fiber supplements and a bunch of other things. So it's really high quality stuff from an organization that really cares about process and sustainability. So that sort of thing is neat, and expanding those relationships, I think, is on my to-do list.
Okay. Your website, refinewellnessconsulting.com. Is that correct?
That is, yes.
All right. How can people get a hold of you?
So email contact@refinewellnessconsulting.com. We're on Facebook under Refined Wellness Consulting, and on Instagram. We post periodically, kind of exercise updates, nutrition tips. So check us out there. That would be great.
All right. I'm pulling up your website just so I can show people. That's the website, refinewellnessconsulting.com. Is that you in the picture?
No.
And you got, let's see. Yep. There's your bio. Contact me through free 30-minute consultation. All right. And what can people expect from your consultation?
I tell you, it's all for the color. We don't do a sales pitch. We just answer questions that they have. Some of those foundational principles with nutrition, physical activity, and behavior. We go over the high points in those. So yeah, you spend 30 minutes really talking about what you want to talk about.
Great. And in general, any last words for people as we're about to end up the show? Anything else that you'd like to last minute tidbits or advice? Yeah,
definitely. I think people should get on board with this 30-30 challenge. I mean, you're 9 days in, so they can do 21 days. No, they start from scratch. But no, I think it's great what you're doing, getting people on board. These challenges are a fantastic way just to get that habit started and going. People are going to enjoy it, and they're going to be healthier because of it.
Great. Well, Dr. Chris Weber, thank you so much for being part of this show. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you for answering my questions about exercise. I hope everything continues to go well with Refined Wellness Consulting. And for everyone who's listening, Dr. Chris Weber is definitely somebody you should know. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt.
All right. Bye.